The Pentagon's withdrawal of 5,000 troops from Germany just became the opening act, because President Trump has now told reporters in Florida that the cuts are going to go, in his words, a lot further than 5,000. He said, and I'm quoting directly, "We're going to cut way down." Spain and Italy are reportedly on the list, too. Two senior Republican chairs of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees have broken with their own president to warn this sends the wrong signal to Russia. Germany's defense minister is calling it anticipated, which raises its own set of alarming questions. Joining me now are Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor, and James Chen, our geopolitical analyst. Sophia, let me start with you. Is Trump blowing up the Western alliance, or is he finally doing what every American president has privately wanted to do for 30 years?
Thanks, Emma. Look, let's be honest about what we're actually watching here. This is not a random act of foreign policy vandalism. This is the culmination of a decades-long, completely legitimate grievance that Republican and Democratic administrations have both raised and then quietly buried when the Europeans looked upset. Germany spent years below the NATO 2% target. Years. The largest economy in continental Europe, sheltering under American military protection, and they couldn't find the political will to meet their own commitments. Douglas Murray has been saying this for a long time. You cannot simultaneously outsource your security to Washington and then criticize Washington's foreign policy from a position of comfortable dependence. That is not a serious posture. What Trump is doing, in principle, is correct. Europe must be forced to take ownership of its own defense. The problem I have is not the destination. It's the fact that we're going to cut way down, announced off the cuff to reporters on a Florida lawn, is not a strategy. It's a vibe. And in military deterrence, vibes don't hold the line against Russian armored divisions.
But Sophia, isn't there an argument that the unpredictability is actually the point? That a clear, structured ultimatum just gives Germany a timetable to ignore? And James, what's your take on this?
Well, look, I think Sophia is half right, but she's missing something important here. Yes, Germany's defense spending record is indefensible. But here's the data point that people keep glossing over. There are roughly 35,000 American troops in Germany right now. We're talking about pulling 5,000, 14%, and Trump is now saying it goes a lot further. The two Republican Armed Services Committee chairs, serious defense people, not CNN Democrats, are publicly saying this undermines deterrence. That matters. And here's what I want to push back on in Sophia's framing. The transactional approach only works if the other side believes you have a credible alternative architecture. Right now, there is no credible alternative architecture. The EU defense integration project is years away from filling any meaningful capability gap. Poland is spending 4% of GDP on defense. Poland gets it. Germany doesn't. But you don't solve Germany by potentially leaving Poland exposed.
I hear what James is saying, but with respect, that misses the point entirely. We've been making that argument for 30 years. Don't push too hard. Don't upset the alliance. Give them more time. And what did 30 years of patience buy us? Germany still dragging its feet in 2024, Russia invading Ukraine, the entire post-Cold War security framework in tatters. At some point, you have to stop rewarding the freeloaders. James is talking about capability gaps. Fine. But the bigger risk isn't a temporary capability gap. It's a permanent culture of dependence that means Europe never builds the military it needs. Short-term pain, long-term sovereignty. That's the trade. And frankly, Friedrich Merz knows exactly what he needs to do. He just needs to be left with no other option.
Here's what I want to know, because this is the question that keeps me up at night. In 6 months, are we looking at a reinvigorated NATO where Germany finally gets serious? Or are we looking at a fractured alliance that Putin has already started calculating against? James, where do you see this going?
The way I see this playing out, there are really 3 possible trajectories, and none of them are clean. The optimistic scenario is that Trump's pressure actually works. Merz accelerates German rearmament, makes binding commitments, and the withdrawal ends up being leverage that strengthened the alliance by forcing European ownership. That outcome is possible. But the risk scenario, and this is what keeps serious defense analysts concerned, is that the withdrawal proceeds faster than European capacity can fill the gap, and you get a window of genuine vulnerability in Central Europe. History tells us Putin tests those windows. The third path, which I think is underreported, is prolonged alliance uncertainty, where European governments start hedging, some toward accommodation with Moscow, some toward EU defense structures that bypass NATO entirely. That fragmentation could end up being more damaging than any single troop number.
Here's what concerns me most, and it's slightly different from James's framing. The real risk isn't what Russia does in the next 6 months. It's what the next 5 years looks like if Europe doesn't use this moment as a genuine wake-up call. If the trajectory continues where Germany treats every American pressure point as a temporary crisis to be managed rather than a structural problem to be solved, we'll be having this exact same conversation again under the next American president. The uncomfortable truth is that Europe's security culture has to change, not the troop numbers, not the NATO communiques, the culture. And right now, a German defense minister saying this withdrawal was anticipated, like it's a weather forecast, tells me that culture hasn't changed nearly enough.
Sophia Reeves, James Chen, genuinely illuminating and genuinely alarming in equal measure. One thing is absolutely certain tonight. Somewhere in Berlin, Friedrich Merz is staring at a very empty checkbook and an even emptier strategic playbook, and the clock is ticking louder than it ever has.